Switch off your phones or the sound. Switch off the sound of the phones, please. We need online, so.
So, as we can start. Dear colleagues, dear our guests, I welcome you on behalf of the Department of Railway Vehicles and Vehicle System Analysis. Today we have come together to participate on the home defense on Mr. Hussein Al-Zyoud. The title of his dissertation is Investigation of the Impact of Printing Parameters to Manage the Properties in EM Technologies. His supervisor is Dr. Peter Fischer, Associate Professor. The home defense is less formal than the public defense, but we will more or less follow the steps of the public defense. Firstly, I would like to ask Mr. Hussein to do this presentation, approximately 20-25 minutes.
Okay. Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My research topic is the investigation of the impact of printing parameters to enhance the properties in additive manufacturing technologies. As we know, additive manufacturing technology can be divided into main 7 categories, and material extrusion is one of these categories that my research focused on it. As we know, it's filament-based. It's heated through the heat blocker and extruded through the nozzle to the building platform and building layer upon layer. It also can be named as fused filament fabrication or fused deposition molding. And the motivation of my research, as we know, this technology has many parameters to be controlled, and each parameter has many limits. So it depends on the response that I want to, the desired response. It could be time, it could be cost, it could be quality, and sometimes it could be like mechanical properties. And the motivation of my research is that residual stress optimization combined parameters influence and underexplored parameters, material structure size, and impact of printing pose, and also post-processing innovation. As you can see here, this is the flow chart of the dissertation. It's divided into two main approaches, the numerical approach and the experimental approach. For the numerical approach, I investigated the residual stress and vacuum deformation, and I used the DigiMap manufacturing simulation and design experiments. Regarding the experimental approach, it's for the mechanical properties like ultimate tensile strength, surface roughness, flexural strength, comparison strength, and impact strength. I use for this these approaches 5 types of different materials. I also investigated different 9 parameters. Also, I made 2 additional investigations: the printing with pose and iron post processing. The characterization methods that I used: mechanical testing, surface roughness stylus tester, iron element analysis, and design of experiments, optical profilometry, and statistic analysis, and imaging microprocess. Regarding my scientific results, I made 7 hypotheses. For the first hypothesis, for the first thesis, the proposed hypothesis was there might be a significant impact of manufacturing structural parameters on the value of residual stress. Also, the thermal aspect don't significantly impact the residual stress. And to achieve this thesis, I made 3 different studies. But at the beginning, it's about the residual stress. As we know, it happens to cue the quick heat and cold of the parts. So the top layer is deposited, it's trying to shrink, but it's constrained by the underlying layers. So this tendency to shrinkage and constraints result in the residual stress. I made 3 different studies for the first thesis point. The first study focused on structural and manufacturing parameters with 3 levels for each parameter. As you can see here, for the structural parameters, I found that the infill density was deeply correlated with the value of residual stress, while the infill pattern does not have any effect or impact on the residual stress. For the manufacturing parameters, I found that layer thickness and printing speed negatively correlated with the residual stress, while the printing temperature was positively correlated with residual stress. Also, I found that the bed temperature does not have any impact on the value of residual stress. And here we can see this is the visual comparison between the DigiMat simulation and the real part printed, and this is the bridge model. And I made this to see the pillars, how the residual stress affect the pillars of the parts, as we can see here. And here is the right view. For the second study, I investigated only the thermal parameters. And as we know, that the heat transfer can be done through 3 mechanisms: convection, convection, and radiation. So I use printing temperature to control the conduction heat transfer. I use the bed temperature to control the conduction and convection heat transfer. I employed used the chamber temperature to control the radiation heat transfer and printing speed to control the 3 heat transfer mechanisms. And for this study, I used 4 different parameters with 3 levels. I employed also a design of experiments and structural approach to determine the relationship between the inputs and outputs. From the design experiment, I used the Takuchi orthogonal array, which focuses on improving the quality of the output by minimizing the variation. And the results showed that the printing temperature was the most significant factor affecting the value of residual stress. For the third study, I only investigated the structural parameter independently to see the impact of these parameters on residual stress. I investigated the printed orientation with 3 different orientations, as you can see in the figure, the raster angle and the infill pattern. And for this study, I found that the printing orientation was the most significant factor also that affecting the value of residual stress. And for phase number 1, it stated that I investigated the influence of manufacturing, structural, and thermal parameters on residual stress in material extrusion printed ABS samples using digimide additive simulation, additive manufacturing, and 3 distinct models to address the different aspects of the process. First, I designed a bridge model to study how manufacturing and structural parameters affect residual stress levels. Through this model, I observed a significant impact of parameters such as their thickness and infill density. For the thermal investigation, I employed Taguchi orthogonal array methodology to analyze a 3D cuboid model examining the relationship between thermal parameters and distribution of residual stress, and found that printing temperature was the most dominant factor and parameter. Moreover, I utilized the cuboid model to further explore how structural parameters affect residual stress, particularly for focusing on orientation effects. Regarding thesis number 2, the proposed hypothesis is that there's the use of Taguchi orthogonal array to optimize thermal parameters could significantly reduce the warping deformation and improve overall performance. For this investigation, I employed the 4 thermal parameters with 3 levels, and I found that the bed temperature was the most significant factor that affecting the overall warping deformation. Also, I found the critical and the optimal levels of each parameter to minimize and optimize the overall warping deformation. So, thesis number 2 stated that I used Taguchi orthogonal array to reveal thermal parameters to minimize warping deformation and enhance the overall performance of ABS printed parts made using material extrusion technology. Moreover, I minimized the warping deformation using the optimal parameters levels. For thesis number 3, the proposed hypothesis was there might be a significant relationship between 5 printing parameters and the warping deformation of the polymer 12 material fabricated using material extrusion. For this thesis, I used 5 different parameters with 3 levels for each parameter, and I found also the bed temperature was the most significant factor that affecting the overall warping deformation for this material. I also successfully defined the optimal levels for each parameter. So thesis number 3 stated that I utilized Taguchi orthogonal array combined with the ANOVA to determine the effect of 5 printing parameters: printing speed, infill density, printing temperature, layer thickness, and bed temperature on the warping deformation response of material extrusion using polymer 12 material. Furthermore, I successfully identified the optimal parameter levels that resulted in the lowest mean warping deformation, effectively minimizing warping in the process. For thesis number 4, the proposed hypothesis stated that there might be a material-dependent influence of common printing parameters on the overall residual stress and warping deformation. For this thesis, I used different 3 types of materials: PAI, ABS, and PA6. I investigated 6 different parameters with 3 levels of each parameter. And regarding the result of this thesis point, regarding the residual stress response, I found that the layer thickness was significantly for the PAI and ABS, and this indicates that it's less sensitive to material differences. Regarding the printing temperature, it has higher influence on the PA6, which needs precise control. Regarding the infill density, across all 3 materials, it was a noticeable effect on residual stress, and that implies that it needs more sensitive to material differences. Regarding the printing speed, bed temperature, and infill pattern, its minimal influence on the residual stress value of all the materials. Regarding the warping deformation, I found that the infill pattern was the most significant factor in all three materials, and I found that this is the only parameter that was independent that can affect the material dependency. Also, for the layer thickness, I found the PI was significantly, while it needs some fine tuning for the other materials. Regarding the printing temperature, the results suggest that the printing temperature is more material dependent. And finally, for the printing speed, infill density, and bit temperature, the result exceeds the material dependency sensitivities. So, thesis number 4 stated that I employed the Cauchy orthogonal array and finite element analysis and found that the sum of printing parameters, printing temperature, printing speed, bit temperature, infill density, layer thickness, and infill pattern are the material dependent, influencing the residual stress and warping deformation of parts fabricated with material extrusion technology. Regarding thesis number 5, the proposed hypothesis that different printing methods and different print orientation could have similar ultimate tensile strain. And for this thesis point, I printed in two orientations, horizontal orientation and vertical orientation. I also printed the horizontal orientation with pause and continuous horizontal orientation, and for the vertical the same. The results that I found for the horizontal orientation, there is no impact of the pose on the parts, and I found that with parts about 46 megapascal and without with pose is 47, while in the vertical printing orientation, I found that it's dropped by 50% of the overall ultimate tensile strength, and with the vertical with the pose, it's dropped by 75% of the ultimate tensile strength. So, thesis number 5 stated that I investigated the impact of printing orientation and printing with pose on the UTS and found that the printing orientation as well as continuous printing and the printing with poses have affected the UTS of PLA parts manufactured using material extrusion technology. For thesis number 6, I proposed two hypotheses. The first hypothesis was the average roughness RA of PLA samples produced using the material extrusion technology could be enhanced using iron post-processing technique. And the second hypothesis was contact and non-contact surface measurements could have incomparable results in certain conditions. For this thesis point, I utilized the iron post-processing, and this technology, it has three main parameters: the path speed, the iron spacing, and the flow rate. And for this technology, this is the schematic for the iron spacing. It means that the different distance between the paths and the iron. Path speeds mean the speed of the extruded head that moving across the top layer, and the flow rate is the percentage of the material of the layer thickness of the parts. So, after applying the iron post-processing to the default setting, I found that I successfully minimized the average surface roughness about 83% using contact measurements and about 80% using non-contact measurements. So it was reduced from 9.6 micrometer to 1.6 micrometer for the contact measurements. Also, after that, I investigated each parameter independently to see the impact of these parameters on the overall warping deformation. For the path speed, I found that increasing path speed leads to increasing in the overall surface roughness of the parts. It was gradually increased. While in the iron spacing, I found that by increasing the spacing between paths, the average surface roughness is dramatically increased value. For the flow rate, it's also positively correlated, but slightly positively correlated with the value of surface roughness. And as we can see here, this is the magnified of top surface using the optical profilometry. As we can see here, this is without ironing, and this is with the default setting. And here we can see after applying the ironing post-processing with the default setting. Here is another optical profilometry chart or figure. Here we can see this is the impact of each parameter independently on the overall top surface roughness. Here we can see the increasing of path speed, increasing of ironing spacing, and increasing of flow rate. And as we can see here from this figure, we can see that ironing spacing is the most important factor that affects the overall surface roughness. So after investigate each parameter independently, I also minimize the overall surface roughness, about 86.4 reduction using the contact measurement methods, and about 81.2% of reduction using non-contact measurements method. I also found that the contact measurements method has some limitations. It includes the potential cause scratches to the soft materials like plastics and polymers. Also, I found that non-contact measurement methods hits very fast and accurate, can provide very fast and accurate results. So, thesis number 6 stated that I minimized the surface roughness of PLA samples manufacturing through material extrusion using ironing post-processing technique. Additionally, I found that different ironing post-processing parameter levels affect the RA value, the surface roughness value. The results indicate that ironing spacing was the most significant effect on the average roughness. Furthermore, I utilized both contact and non-contact measurement methods, allowing for comprehensive examination of their respective limitation and accuracy in characterizing surface roughness. For the last thesis point, the proposed hypothesis stated that implementing ironing processing as a printing process could enhance the mechanical properties of material extrusion bars. And for this thesis point, I employed box sprinkle design. It's one of the design experiment methodology, and it's popular surface roughness methodology. For this, I used 3 levels for each parameters, and I found that regarding this investigation, I optimized the ultimate tensile strength, and the overall ultimate tensile strength is increased about by 28% of increase. For the flexural strength increased about 35.4 of increase, and for the compressive strength it increased about 25% of increase, and for the impact strength it's dramatically increased by about 161% of increase. And the reason for this properties is because of I use the Al-Zyoud and its notch, and then it was a stress concentration, so minimizing the voids and defects in this properties could enhance the overall impact strength. Also for the surface roughness, I reduced the overall average surface roughness about 69% of decrease. And as we can see here, this is the macrograph of the cross-sectional area after fracture. And in the first one we can see without ironing, the second with after applying ironing, and each the mechanical property. As we can see here, if the vision is right, good. Like we can see the voids and defects of the internal structure of the parts before using the ironing, and how it was minimized and almost can be improved the overall mechanical properties. And for here's number 7, I utilized the box sprinkle design to investigate the impact of ironing process on the mechanical properties in material extrusion samples. I found that the ironing processing enhanced the overall properties of printed samples, and spacing between passes was the most significant parameters. And this is here for the practical usage of my dissertations, and this is here you can see the future work, and here's the list of my publications. And thank you for listening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for this excellent presentation, and thank you for the time that we were very kind to do this. Firstly, I am ask the two reviewers to present their review. Firstly, I would like to ask Dr. Nagy Takács and after it, Dr. József Inka. But before I start, before we started, I kindly ask both of you that after the reviews or during the reviews to declare that first the presented and writing thesis is the candidate own and independent work. Secondly, can the thesis be submitted in its current title and form, or if not, after what changes can it be made? And thirdly, does the thesis contain sufficient scientific results? So, first I ask Dr. Agnes Takács to take this. Thank you very much.
I changed my writings according to your question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So here is my review. It consists of the introduction of my review, and the second part is the summary of the thesis. I will not read out this part, but the final results that will I accept it or not. So this is what I think. Nowadays, additive manufacturing is a very frequently researched topic, as there are so many potentials in this technology, and researchers still do not know everything about it. Besides, engineers always try to find the best solution for the given problems. If there is an existing solution for a problem, they will improve it. So we can say that the topic of the dissertation is quite a significant detail of the AM programs. The dissertation takes 97 written pages and 21 pages of appendix. It consists of 9 chapters. In the first chapter, the candidate writes about the background of the topic, introduces the objective, the research methodology, and his hypothesis. From the second chapter to the 8th chapter of the work, the candidate deals with several questions of the research, and he closes each chapter with a thesis as an answer to his hypothesis written down in chapter 1. In the dissertation, there are 48 figures and 15 more in the appendices. There are also tables in the work, 35 in the dissertation part and 5 more in the appendices. There are minor editing problems the candidate should correct them. The candidate knows all the The candidate knows and correctly applies the rules of English grammar, but there are these minor spellings, so these should be corrected in the final version. There is a list of abbreviation which is very useful, as it often happens that the scientific word uses the same abbreviation for different definitions. The dissertation refers to 200 different literatures. Just the list of them takes more than 10 pages. References fit the usual expectations. The opponent admires the detailed work of the candidates by referring to the proper literature in the written part of the dissertation. At the end of chapter 2 to chapter 8, after each thesis, candidate summarizes his own publications in the topic of the given thesis. Each of these publications appeared in high-quality journals, which already shows the significance of the dissertation. The overall organization of the dissertation is logical and clear, easy to understand and follow. The opponent likes the structure of the dissertation very much. And I should come to here. The opponent accepts the candidate thesis. The dissertation is a very deep work, both from the point of view of the literary background and on the side of the candidate's own research. He uses up-to-date models and methods for his work. Of course, the possibility of using different types of printers also helps the significance of his work. Nowadays, circular economy is getting more and more important. In chapter 4, the candidate also mentions that P812 can be a suitable choice for both circular economy and 3D printing applications. The opponent has the following question to this part. Question for the public debate. What makes you think that P812 can be a suitable choice for circular economy? how can be this material, maybe better than other filament materials, suitable for the philosophy of the circular economy or circular manufacturing. And the opponent declares the following: the thesis is the candidate's own work, the thesis can be submitted, and the thesis
Scientific result.
is okay in point of view of the scientific, sufficient scientific results. So that was my
Thank you very much. Thank you for the answers for the three questions as well. I will ask the Dr. Inka to answer, to make his review, and after you have the possibilities to answer or to react for this reviews. Also, I ask you.
Thank you. I'm sorry for a little bit mistake that in the morning I was in the desk and my face is a little bit numb in the right side. Maybe my explains and English spelling may be out of order sometimes, but I will read it. So thank you for to be the reviewer of Hussein's work. I think you saw my review, and I think it was a very good work, and I hope it's, that you continue this work. So, in addition to the content and the list of figures, tables, and abbreviations, the PhD thesis contains 9 chapters, followed by the references and the appendixes. The full length of the work is 129 pages, the core text is 86 pages, followed by the references, which has a very good number, 200 items. And finally, appendix A, B, and C, which were 21 pages. The author's focus is on the additive technology in a narrower sense of on the effects on manufacturing parameters in case of material extrusion. The author set up 7 theses. Thesis 1, 2, 3, and 4 based on the simulation techniques, and thesis 5, 6, 7 are dealing with manufacturing and material testing on the outdoor specimens. The chosen research topic is current additive manufacturing is constantly growing and improving the manufactured parts functionality and their properties is important, as we know. The structure of the dissertation is correct, the readability is flawless, there are hardly any typos in it, so it was a very good. I have an English skill, for me it was very good, so that's what I can say about the language things in it. The internal logic of the dissertation is not the traditional Hungarian type, I think, but adequate. The research methodology is good. The candidate used the statistical and design of experience methods to formulate statements between the design parameters. There were some places where they encountered English terms, words that were foreign to me and I think rarely used, which, according to my experience, appear in AI-generated text. Nevertheless, my check didn't reveal any AI-generated parts in it, so I think it's okay from this side. Today, I think it will be a much more bigger effect on these university works and scientific works to check these things. I think this work is okay in this field. Okay, in the beginning of every chapter, a literature review can be found, which is related to the topic of the chapter. In chapter 1, the candidate introduced the subject of the dissertation, the motivation, and the main objective. In my review, I made some comments which are in connection with grammatical and stilistical and typing mistakes. The opponent saw it. I hope that he will do the changes, and in the review I won't talk about these comments of me. I read through the dissertation and made comments and my opinions continuously, And for example, I have a question that at the beginning of the thesis in chapter 2, in figure 2.4, when the author said residual stress, it means the maximum residual stress of the whole tested parts. And in chapter 2, when the author made the Digimant AM simulations on the evaluation of the results part, more graphical explanation needed from the parts. How the residual stresses distribute in the test part geometries. I saw some plus images in this presentation, so it will be a good way. And at the end of chapter 2, there were the thesis 1. I think thesis 1 is acceptable, but maybe the simulated material can be characterized more to make more specialized to be a thesis. In chapter 3, the author explained his thermal evaluation of material exclusion process parameters and their impact on warping deformation of ABS parts, used Digimant AM to simulate some parameter sets and created signal-to-noise ratio calculations to show the process parameters which creates the smallest warping effect. I have questions for that chapter. In chapter 3, the used warping deformation values were the biggest warping deformations of the samples. And how did you calculate the values in the figure 3.3 mean of mean chart? Mean of means, sorry. And at the end of this chapter, I can say that thesis 2 is acceptable, but I had these thinkings after that reading the dissertation, but in this field I saw that these results only created using finite element analysis, and the question is that the simulation software gives accurate results which reflect reality or not. At the end of the dissertation I saw that there were some analytical studies or some samples which connects to this. Maybe something can reflect on this question. In my opinion, some parts of the sentences can be deleted from this thesis. Maybe in this thesis that you showed us, it's changed. For example, to overcome the limitations of the traditional laboratory studies or balancing cost and time constraints, somehow it gives me a feeling that these are some filling phrases on these things and between the scientific statements. But it's my feeling, maybe others have another thinkings about that. In chapter 4, the author made another simulation analysis with different printing parameters to enhance the part quality, finding the optimal manufacturing parameters. In this chapter, at the end, we see the thesis 3. This thesis 3, I think, is acceptable. It can be stated that it is the new results with this exact material, this manufacturing parameter and research methodology, I think. In chapter 5, the author explains his results of how different manufacturing parameters affect on the samples, properties manufactured by different materials, as we saw, P, EI, ABS, and PA6. I have a question for that thing. Are you certain that by using the Taguchi L27 method, if you vary multiple manufacturing parameters simultaneously in the tested sample series, you can reliably draw accurate conclusions about the effect of a specific parameter change? But according to that, thesis 4 is acceptable according to the results explained in the dissertation. Okay, in chapter 6, the author explained the results of the layer orientation on ultimate tensile strengths of 3D printed PLA. I think in this chapter, thesis 5 is acceptable based on the experimental work and statistical evaluations. There were a typo on the end of this thesis. I think I didn't see it in presentation, so I think it was good. In chapter 7, the author go around the subject of ironing process for the usage to make surfaces smoother or define surface roughness parameters. On page 16, the author said that all printed samples were produced using an open source desktop 3D printer. I think we should define this machine more precisely here too. Like mentioned later, this machine was a Create Render V2. I read through the dissertation and now I have this comment. After that, I saw that, okay, we have the machine type, but maybe somewhere here it can be stated that this is the machine. Okay, in 7.4.2, the author said that the ironing spacing and overlap can affect the printed part surface quality and mechanical properties. And in this field, I had the question that did you measure the mechanical properties of an iron part? After that, you showed that okay, you created own samples and measured that. But does this change in mechanical properties occur only at the boundary layers, or does it also affect on the lower layers? Maybe in the pictures that I saw, it can answer these questions. And in the chapter 7, I didn't find any mention about the direction of ironing. What was the ironing direction compared to the last projection direction? And if a surface in the Z direction was ironed, was the ironing direction perpendicular to or parallel with the build direction? On slide 35, I saw very interesting pictures when you showed the effect of the parameters with optical images. I don't know, was it in the dissertation?
Okay, appendix, because I want to enlarge.
Yeah, okay. It was very good for me now in the presentation, and I'm searching my previous things that I think I didn't see that, but it was very good for me now. That was my thing, but we don't see in the review. Okay. And in connection with thesis 6, I think it is acceptable according to the results explained in the dissertations. And in my opinion, I would suggest adding to this to the thesis that among the pass speed, ironing spacing, and flow rate, the ironing spacing parameter has the most significant effect on the average roughness. As you mentioned, I found that ironing spacing significantly impacts the roughness values. I think it can be more complex statement according to these measures. And in the last chapter, the author did mechanical tests on the material excluded parts to examine the effects of ironing post-processing on the mechanical properties. In connection with this chapter and the thesis, I think is acceptable according to the results explained in the dissertation. So at the end, I can see that the references are satisfying. The 200 reference item contains mostly articles which are appropriate, up-to-date, and relevant. It contains the basic scientific works and the latest papers as well from prestigious journals. I suggest creating a separate list for the candidate's own publication. At the end of the slides, I saw that you did that. I would see this list at the end of the dissertation too. And after a long review, summarized evaluation of me from me, the candidate presented a great dissertation work providing that he can fulfill the requirements of the PhD title. There are some minor issues of supplementary information needed which were previously described, what I said now. And these issues should be modified. After these minor changes, I recommend submitting the dissertation for public discussion and public defense, of course, and to reflect for the chairperson's questions. Of course, I think, according to the dissertation and this presentation, I think it was the candidate's work, so I have no problem with that. After the some minor things that I suggested maybe can be changed, and after that I think it will be okay, and I recommend to submit it. And I don't know what was the last thing. I think it
does the thesis contains enough or sufficient scientific results?
Yeah, of course. As I see, I extra towards thesis with some inner thing. I think yes, it contains enough scientific results. I think.
Thank you very much for your review, and both of you for this detailed review, and that's the possibilities to answer the questions and to say some words about the opinions.
Yes. Thank you so much for your shared time for reviewing this dissertation. I want to answer to Agnish about her questions, the concern about these materials. I found that these materials can be circular in bio way, and I found some articles they made it from waste cooking oil. So this material is recyclable without any significant degradation, so it can be continuous. It also can be lower carbon footprint because of the biodegradability, recyclability, and from power energy or that energy. Also due its long lifespan for this material. So I think this specification of this material can make it better than other materials regarding the recyclability, regarding the long time degradations. And this is my question. And for Dr. Joseph, I just want to focus on some important questions that really was critical for the dissertations. And I'm sorry that I didn't mention that in the whole dissertation because sometimes I guess so. Because of that, okay. Thank you so much for this point. I just want to show this. Yeah, regarding this, for the graphical explanation. So about the resources distributed, as you can see here, there is the color distributor, and we can see here this is. Yes. But I think because of the lights, it's not appears very well. We can see here how distributions and the most critical was in the edges because we know that the corners but cool fast because they are exposed to two adjacent sides. So the cooling rate will be faster for that. And for the other critical questions, as for the warming and for the warming deformation and resources, all the results in the simulation and the numerical solution was the maximum because we want to know the worst case that affect the body, so we want as a factor of safety. And for the mean of means, I just want to draw a small example for that. As you know, yes, for example, if I want take the means of the first level of the mid temperature, it's about 87, but I change the other parameters, but I want to calculate the mean of means. So because of that, this is the equation for the mean of means, and because we have many parameters, many levels, so I did it by statistical analysis software. It's called Minitab, and it's mentioned in the dissertation for that. And the last questions, most important questions I found regarding the thesis number 4, the Taguchi, question number 6. Taguchi orthogonal Al-27, it's the main benefits of it, it's isolating the main effects of each parameter. So it works as each parameter dependently. If you want to make a full factorial design, you will need a lot of experiments, a lot of trials. So mostly, it's not covered the whole interactions, complexity. But using the ANOVA after that, it can with a confidence level 95%. So I can know each parameter's impact independently and know that what's the best optimal level for each parameter. So I think after applying the ANOVA with the confidence level, it can cover that. Taguchi method. Yes, and the other comments, I will share that. I will correct it in the dissertation before submitting to the public defense. For the and thank you so much for this comments because really I just mentioned as a one word in the presentation in the table, but after that I will show that the printing. So here is the printing parts. This is the schematic for printing part. I printed in lines to the x-axis. After that, I applied the ironing process perpendicular to the printing lines, like to cover all the paths, and I measured the surface roughness perpendicular to the top part also, because we know the worst case is to be perpendicular to the cutting path or printing path or whatever. Yeah. And we talk about this charger. So this is the ironing was after every layer, because of that we want to change and like get the internal construction or structure of the parts is more solid, and we want to like avoid the voids and defects of the internal structure of the parts. So how we can improve the overall quality and improve the parts. And thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for your answers. And I asked the reviewers whether they accept the answers. Yes, of course. Thank you very much. Now I open the discussions. Has anybody questions or any comments about the thesis? Sorry, I didn't see it. Thank you.
Just for the record, let me introduce myself. My name is Adam Törek and I'm professor at the Transport Technology and Transport Economics Department. Congratulations for the presentation and for giving the time. We really appreciate it on behalf of the jury. On the other hand, it was a very good dissertation. I managed to read it, and for the presentation as well, congratulations. Could you go back to the very last slide, please? Your future plans? Okay, the previous one. Yes, future work. Would you be so kind as to tell me, is your future work related to vehicle engineering or vehicle design? So the knowledge that you have gained here in our doctoral school, is it be useful in the vehicle engineering?
Actually, it's not related to the vehicle engineering. It's actually to manufacturing process or smart manufacturing techniques, because as manufacturing, it wasn't a part of the automotive industry. But I work in the as this techniques or methodology, and it's a standalone. So my opinion, if I want to go to further studies, I will go to deeper with this technology, not in the automotive industry, because it's a little bit it's employed in this technology, the automotive. But for me, for my classes, my dissertation, my published research topic, it was focused on this technology. So I would like to go further for this, deeper for this technology in any different automotive, like medical or any other. For me, it's better to be like in specific just as I like it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Al-Zyoud, you accept the answer.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, we are in the transportation and vehicle engineering faculty. I think that it was a good answer, but maybe you can make it better to say that it's the improvement of the technology, and of course it can be applied in the vehicle industry too. So maybe.
Maybe I misunderstand the question. Say, my future work or this technology mean?
Every time it's good to reflect on the vehicle industry and the vehicle connected things. So to say something that you are working on, that it's good for the vehicle industry. So a little bit in connection to the public defense. So yes, it can be help the automotive industry and of course the faculty too.
Thank you.
What is yours?
Sorry. For those who don't know me, my name is Laszlo Lovas. I'm working in this department. I want just to make a remark first and second a question. Remark, how it's useful. If you think about the war which is in Ukraine, for the repairs on field, if you have to make a part for your drone, for example, this is a technology where you can repair your drone on the battlefield, so it's very useful outcome of this possible this research work. And also, so 3D manufacturing for plastics or for metals, both can be very useful. This is a very good question. You talked about ironing, and you had a spectacular increase of tensile stress for the ironing. What was the increase in manufacturing time? If you iron every layer, as you told, do you have an idea how many time increases required for this? Thank you.
Thank you so much for the question. It's mentioned in the presentation about the limitation of this process. It's time consuming and power consuming. But as you mentioned before, I'm looking for the response. So I'm looking for quality, but I don't care about somehow about the time or the way, the money. But sometimes I need more. I can control the time, I can control the properties. So this process is one of the, like, the post-processing technique usually like the vapor, like the annealing, that heating, reheating, it's a long process sometimes in the additive manufacturing. But this process is implemented in the same machine. So okay, you can like lose some time, lose some like cost, but overall in the same machine you can improve the quality of the part that you need. So this is one of the solutions.
But you haven't answered my question. The question was how many time increase it requires. Is it doubles the time?
No, more than 7 times or 8 times, actually.
Sorry?
More than 7 times.
7 times.
Yes.
That means you make the part in X time, and if you do ironing for each layer, it takes 7x time. Okay, so it's a quite big increase.
Yes, but okay. As I said, it's looking for the properties so can be improved.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other question or remarks?
Then if we open the remark section, on behalf of the doctoral school, I would like to draw the attention of the candidate as a remark that there is a strict regulation that the final version of dissertation cannot exceed the 100 A4 format pages. So there is a lot of good advice that you received here. Try to implement in a way that not have more than 100 pages, please.
Okay.
And it's not only a question, it's a remark, it's a request on behalf of the doctoral school.
Without that, then this is not. I think it's under 100. Okay.
Yes, I have checked already, but
after the comments.
yeah, because everybody suggested to do something, add something, but you also need to delete something.
Yes. Thank you very much for this important remark. Okay, any other remarks? Oops. No? If it was, no, then thank you very much for to be here today. And I would like to summarize after the suggested changes that the two-year reviewers here was suggested that it can be submitted. And I have to ask it finally, maybe someone has an opposite opinion about that. If not, then I have not too much work. I congratulate you for Mr. Hussein and Al-Zyoud, and thank you for the reviewers for the great work, and thank you for to be here and to coming here, and hereby close the OnlyFans. Thank you very much.
And I would thank to everyone who was with me with this, for me it's a long journey, hard journey to living abroad, without the family, without my belongings. And I want to give a special thanks really to Dr. Peter Pitzer, my great supervisor, because my relationship with him, it wasn't like a supervisor and a student. We were like brothers, and he shared his small office with me. After a lot of this, every time I print some printed parts to see what this. So I want to give him a special thanks for that and make the communication easier. Just in 1 sec, I want to ask a question, have anything, so to improve my work too much, and I appreciate for that. Thank you so much. And thank you for the family. They supported me from a distance abroad. And because we know that the circumstances is there, it's a little bit hard. So I hope everything was going okay. And thank you very much for coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you.